Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming along. I'm Victor. I'm the development lead at Cobry. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be talking about NoCode for the second time here at Codebase. Thank you so much for having me. So today we're going to be talking about AppSheet and how AppSheet kind of differs from some of the other no-code tools that are out there. It's a bit different in who it targets and how it can help a business grow and expand, and how it can automate some processes that may have historically been a bit difficult to crack. So first of all, at Cobry, we're business application crazy. So the core of what we do at Cobry is Google Workspace. And you've all probably used Google Workspace to some amount before, whether that's Google Sheets, Gmail, or Google Drive. And so Google acquired AppSheet last year, or maybe the year before now. Time flies so much. So we quickly jumped on that bandwagon and partnered with AppSheet with Google as well to deliver AppSheet applications and training to businesses all over the world. Since then, our team has delivered 10 plus successful multinational AppSheet projects with users all over the globe. So that's kind of testament to how well it scales. But enough about Cobry. I'm going to start off with the so what. Usually this is placed at the end of a presentation, but I want to let you know what you're getting yourself in for talking to me. So first we're going to cover where AppSheet fits in a no-code space. Then we're really going to focus on the second point: how does AppSheet accelerate development, and who is AppSheet good for? Is it good for you? Is it good for me? Who does it target, and who's going to get a lot of value out of this no-code platform? So AppSheet, there's the new logo. This one came out a couple of months ago. I had to redo this presentation with a new logo. So it's a cloud-based no-code application platform. Basically all no-code application platforms are cloud-based. There's not many that you host on your own servers or whatnot. Here's a really important one. It's got an emphasis on citizen developers and organizations and DIY apps. And we're going to really drill into what citizen developers are very soon. And AppSheet is also an effort to democratize application building. So applications are kind of scary things, especially when you've heard about all the stories about how it takes ages to build an application. It's really costly, it's really expensive. So AppSheet is an effort to really democratize application building. And this really nicely feeds into the idea of citizen developers and businesses. So yeah, as we are here, we're going to focus on the citizen developer part, because I really think that's the unique selling proposition of AppSheet. So what makes a citizen developer? Pain, lots of pain. A citizen developer is born when they're met with a difficult choice. And I can guarantee all of us have came across this pain before, whether small or really big. So what is this pain? I have a process that needs to be bettered. And I like the use of the word bettered because it could be streamlined, it could be optimized, it could be automated. Overall, I have a process that just needs to be better. Or I don't have a process at all, and I need it to happen immediately or as fast as possible. For the most part, when you come across this problem, and I'm sure most of us have, is you've got three options. Option number one is you buy something off the shelf to help you with this process. So let's say you're an HR department and you're really struggling with workflows and automations regarding the people that you're taking care of. You can buy an off-the-shelf HR tool, and you can usually be quite successful with that. Or let's say you're a sales team and you need a CRM, you're managing your customers. You can buy off the shelf. You've got your HubSpots, your Salesforces, and they work really well for a lot of organizations. Your second choice is custom make it. I'll just hire a developer to do it, and we're going to have it just the way we want it. So that's your second option. And then a lot of us, myself included, quite often, we usually divert onto the third option is, sod it, let's make a spreadsheet and have it all run using a spreadsheet. And especially with Google Sheets, where it's so easy to have a multi-person process on a spreadsheet, this is usually the option that most departments and most people go for, because that's what they're comfortable with. So we're going to look through those three options, and then at the end, how AppSheet seems to solve this problem once and for all. So I'll buy off the shelf. Usually, you fall into two categories. You either have too little features in the application you buy, or you have too many. There's this wonderful happy zone right in the middle, and some people find that application that works just for them, but those are usually unicorn applications. And if you have any of these for any sort of processes, I want to know. So please get in touch. So it's either you've got a small application that does the core of what you need it to do, but doesn't do that one thing that is really paramount to your organization. So you're going to start looking at integrations and connections and maybe try to jerry-rig it and look for workarounds to get it the thing you want it to do. Or you buy a huge app, an enterprise resource management application that just does everything under the sun. And for the most part, all your employees or colleagues will hate you for it because they hate using it. So this unicorn application, if you've got some of these, let me know because I want to know all about them. So, I mean, I could technically use Google Tasks as my CRM. I could have a to-do list. I need to take care of my customers. I need to do some sales. Or I can use Salesforce as my CRM, and this is the only feature that I'll ever use. So those are the two sort of paradigms when it comes to buying off the shelf. It's very difficult to find something that suits you just fine. Fine. I'll custom make it. I'll find someone that makes it just the way I want it to. Well, here's the sad news. Applications cost a lot of money to custom make. There's a source here that suggests that an application costs at a minimum $70,000 to go live, up to $250,000 plus if it's scalable. So unless you've got pockets made of gold, I don't think this is a good approach. So for some people it is. For some people it is. And then lastly, sigh, we'll just use a spreadsheet. And thus, a citizen developer is born. So let's talk about citizen developers for a second. A citizen developer is an employee who creates application capabilities for consumption by themselves or others. Now, I can put my hand up, and I'm sure all of you will be able to put your hand up and say that you've actually done this before. You've probably created a process using technology that helps you or others achieve a goal. Therefore, your spreadsheets are apps, and that probably makes you a citizen developer. But there's some caveats to this, unfortunately. Spreadsheets run the world, and that's kind of cool, but also kind of terrifying. Whether it's healthcare systems or hiring process or finance, everything finance, down to COVID tracking systems when we first came into the pandemic. It's kind of terrifying because people always default to the thing that's the path of least resistance, and for the most part, spreadsheets are the way to build processes within organizations. And even if you're a startup, even if you're just 2 people or 5 or 10, you're going to have spreadsheets that work most of your business. Or whether you're an enterprise with 10,000 plus seats, you're going to have some spreadsheets that do core line of business things. And again, that kind of scares me. It's just like, was it 5 million devices run Java? Really, really scary. There's some fantastic headlines. This website's amazing. I hope you all have time to check it out afterwards. This is what happens when you have line of business things run in spreadsheets. Here's some headlines. Excel spreadsheet error blamed for UK's 16,000 missing coronavirus cases. Wonderful. Here's a fun one. $61 million fine after a spreadsheet error. I can keep popping these up. There's so many, but this one's really, really funny. Sometimes it's easier to rewrite genetics than update Excel. And again, I've got so many of these, and they're all incredibly entertaining, but they hone in on one thing that AppSheet aims to solve. So if you're not, AppSheet is here. Again, I had to update the logo here, so it looks kind of jank, but bear with me, please. Used to look better. So to fully understand how AppSheet helps the development process, or the process development process, is you kind of have to understand the anatomy of an application. And it's when you distill it into these three parts, it's incredibly simple. First, you have the front end, and that's the part that makes your app look nice, the part that you interact with, the one that you click over your cursor and type things in, that's the front end, the interactivity part. Then you have the back end. The back end are the gears behind the scenes that crunch all of the logic, crunch all of the events that you give it at the front end and give you a result. Then lastly, you have a database, your data store, and that's the bit that holds all of the information required to make your application run. Now, you can apply this to anything. You can apply this to any process, but I'm going to apply this to the process of a spreadsheet. So when it comes to the front end, a user accesses the spreadsheet to create and update information. So you could be typing information into a spreadsheet. The back end, you've got all of the heavy data wrangling, so all the functions and formulas. I mean, I'm sure we can all empathize with the kind of spreadsheet hell when you open up a spreadsheet and you're like, what's going on here? Because there's so many different functions and formulas going on. And then lastly, it also stores the data that you put into it. So it kind of does all three, right? But there are drawbacks to a lot of this. There's a reason that when programmers go out into the world, they try to separate these three things as much as possible so they don't overlap. That's usually called the model view controller framework. But there's caveats to this being all contained within a spreadsheet. So you've got data overwhelm, it's prone to errors, accidental deletions happens all the time. I get calls from our backup service saying, hey, did you meddle with the spreadsheet? Because we need the old version back because something went wrong, someone typed in the wrong thing. And lastly, it's difficult to implement a sophisticated backend. I've worked with organizations that have finance departments that run into the 50, 60 of people, and they all pile in on one spreadsheet trying to do a singular thing. I don't know how they do it. It's absolute madness, but it does happen out there, trust me. So here's where AppSheet comes in. It replaces the front end and the back end of your entire spreadsheet application. And note that this doesn't have to be a spreadsheet at all. It can be a database like SQL. It can be a data store like BigQuery. It can even be your Google Calendar. It integrates with a lot of things. But I'm just using spreadsheets for the sake of argument here. But what it does is it really simplifies your interface with your process. So someone that may have had trouble putting in their absent days in a spreadsheet, a holiday tracker, will now be able to use an AppSheet front end to interact with the data. And the nice thing about it, it all runs back end in the spreadsheets as well. So all the reporting charts that you're usually familiar with when it comes to spreadsheets still apply. So let's look at an app, and this is the bit that's 100% going to fail, but if I click escape here, I have an app that we actually use at Cobry for some of our HR processes. So I've obfuscated the data, of course, and I hope it refreshes. So here's an application that we use all of our employee tracking for. So if I ever enroll in a course, or I go absent on holiday leave, or there's some holiday requests, or even the laptop that I was using right over there, I could register it against my name at Cobry, all using an application that, spoiler alert, we built in 4 hours. 4 hours to have a full process that works for us without having to go buy off the shelf or without having to consult with a custom developer. So that's what makes AppSheet super, super powerful, is the incredibly fast time to live. Now, AppSheet has a caveat in that it's an opinionated no-code development tool, which means that if you try to deviate away from where it tries to lead you, things go kind of awry. So you really have to fit your use case with the platform rather than try and bend the platform for what you want to do. Something Bubble's really, really good at. So I can interact with it, so I can go into my company employee profile. I come into here, it'll load. I can scroll through. I had a slightly less hair back then on my head, but if I scroll through, I can see all of my holiday requests, my related appraisals, my training that I've undertaken, and I can always log this and interact with this. And the beauty of this as well is that the people that's running this, the people that are interested in this information, it's all in a spreadsheet. So they can integrate it with their favorite BI tools, such as Data Studio, Tableau, or Power BI. This could be exported into something else, and this really integrates really nicely with any API framework that you might know. Now, coming back to the presentation, and hopefully this works again. If I click share, not share, present, wrong button, of course. Slideshow. There we go. Loading, moment of truth. There we go. We're live again. So we literally made the app in the morning and we kept iterating. And this is something that we actually use internally, so we kind of like to eat our own dog food. But we only had 17 users, we only have 17 employees. Toyota use AppSheet for their line of business car manufacturing processes. So this really scales up to thousands of users. So you can come from idea or a spreadsheet-based process or even a paper-based process. We've been working with charities all over Glasgow in which they have filing cabinets worth of data, migrating over to a modern business application stack and being able to throw AppSheet on it within a couple of days to have it all digitized and processed nicely is paramount to a digital transformation success. Nice thing about AppSheet as well is it's mobile first. So it's really designed for when you're out and about and you're maybe a front of line worker and you really need to access some data quite fast. So it's really good for asset tracking, HR stuff like what I just talked about there. We've also built custom CRMs on it too. So it's really flexible in that way too. So coming back to the idea of having to figure out some sort of HR solution, instead of that 4-hour development sprint, these were the 5 contenders on our shortlist, but we don't have feature control. So if there was one feature missing from any of these, we'd really have to try and integrate it with something else or build something ourselves, which makes things very, very difficult for when we need that one feature that a SaaS application just simply doesn't provide. Whereas on AppSheet, director gives us a call or HR gives us a call and says, hey, can you add that feature? I say, sure, no problem. We'll get it actioned soon. So lastly, and I told you this was going to be quick, coming back to the so what, we kind of covered where AppSheet fit into the no-code space. So it's a no-code platform built for businesses that need to streamline processes. So anything from, as I said, asset tracking, inventory management, HR, anything like that, that is usually a spreadsheet-based process or a very old driverless process, you can modernize using AppSheet. How does it accelerate development? It helps create processes that are robust, secure, easy to use, and easy to develop and iterate on. And that's something that we didn't really cover today about the robustness and security. But that's something that businesses value a lot, especially in the high compliance sector. Because this runs on Google Cloud, usually organizations that use AppSheet already use Google Workspace. There's no processing agreements to sign. There's no different data processors that you're going to have to send your data over to then use it. It all happens natively within Google Cloud. So if your organization is already running on Workspace, which is GDPR compliant, which is HIPAA compliant with an asterisk, you can use AppSheet without signing any additional processing agreements, which is really, really good, especially for large teams in which it takes lots of bureaucracy to onboard a new tool. And lastly, who is AppSheet good for? Well, it's for people that are frustrated with day-to-day business processes, the citizen developers, the people that said, sod it, let's make a spreadsheet for this. That's who AppSheet is really good for. But you can really kind of try and tailor it to the processes that you'd like it to do. But as I said, it's highly opinionated, which means it is built for certain types of processes. And I hope I managed to convey that in a meaningful way today. So, lastly, I'm super open to connecting. Cobry is all about anything Google. So if you're into Workspace, if you're into data, if you're into building no-code apps, you'll love our YouTube and LinkedIn. We make entertaining, good content. We try to be as informative as possible while also staying relevant. Apologies. Our website is everything you need to know about Cobry. So whether, again, that's something that you want to dabble in a bit of no-code, or if you want to talk to us about data or Google Workspace, how you can streamline your business, and we can give you a framework on how to run a modern business using a modern tech stack centered around Google. Cobry.com, Cobry.co.uk is the place to be. And lastly, if you want to continue this conversation and continue this dialogue, there is a QR code and you are going to get a link to this anyway. So if you want to link in with me, or if you want to link in with, or if you want to continue this conversation in any way you want, whether that's Google Chat, Slack, email, or even just get on my mobile, I'm totally happy to connecting and keeping this conversation going, because it's something that I'm super passionate about, and it's something that we're going to continue to do at Cobry. So that brings me to the end of my talk. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks so much. I really want to just go and build something. But now I have so many like Google Sheets, spreadsheets, that I want to make something with them. I had a question before I throw it open about how well does it talk to other things? Like, so could you set up AppSheet? Is it quite sort of Google centric, or could you say have it talk to an Airtable, or something outside the ecosystem if you wanted it to?
For sure. So AppSheet has its native integrations, which are the backbone of the application. So that's either sheets, databases, calendars. But what it has is it has an open API. So anything that you can plug into Zapier or Integromat, it communicates really well. But it also has webhooks, which means it can publish events. So as things happen on AppSheet, so as people interact with your data, you can have it kind of flare up a signal saying a piece of data has changed. And if you've got Airtable, or if you've got some sort of API or a connector, you can be listening to these changes and acting accordingly. So there is quite a developed connection infrastructure with other services as well. It just depends what you're trying to integrate with. I know Bubble calls them plugins. Other Other tools call it something else, but yeah, there is an open API. So anything you can interact with Zapier, you can do with AppSheet too.
Cool. Questions from the floor? I'll go here first.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks. Really interesting talk. You talked about not having feature control on the alternative HR platforms. Presumably, you don't have feature control on AppSheet either. Is that a concern? Or is that not an issue?
So I guess feature is a really broad term. So a feature could be a piece of data that's missing under a record, or a feature could be a way of interacting with the application, or a design change. There are some things that you cannot change on AppSheet, but the flexibility is much higher than most of those HR platforms that or all of those HR platforms that we talked about there. So in terms of data customizability, it's endless. So you can be recording as much data or as little data as you want. But when it comes to maybe some processes or workflows under the design bracket of features, that's when AppSheet's kind of constrained. So it's all about knowing about the limitations of the platform. As I said, it's quite highly opinionated, which means it locks you into a certain way of thinking. But if you can appreciate that and if you can work within those terms, the opportunities are endless as to what you can design. It's like,
So Google, I guess, has been known on occasion to kill off some projects.
the Google graveyard,
I'm not
right?
suggesting that they're going to kill off AppSheet, but do you have a sense of what their roadmap for AppSheet is, especially since they've acquired it recently?
Yes, so they're going all in on AppSheet. It's being integrated with Google Workspace. So Google Workspace is their flagship business collaboration and communication platform. So AppSheet was initially brought in as an auxiliary app that just kind of sits there and you can use, kind of like Data Studio, if you're aware. But the AppSheet team is now merged with the Workspace team. So Workspace, Touchwood is the last thing that's going to be deprecated on Google Cloud because so many organizations rely on it. Airbus relies on it. Morrison's relies on it. Huge mega corporations rely on Google Workspace. And now that AppSheet is being brought into that core team, I don't see any kind of visions of it being sunset anytime soon. It's just getting started.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
I can do the running around.
Yeah, I was going to ask about automation. 'Cause you mentioned, I've seen it in the blurb before we came, and just a bit of a chat about how it's worked with automation.
That's right. So you can automate a lot of things on it. It's usually event-based. So you can configure workflows using AppSheet, which means that based on a certain event, whether that's change to the data or change to the application, you can build really customizable workflows that create a chain of events for the data or for external services. So that means when you're building an application, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's carry on with that HR application, and let's say I'm onboarding a new person into my organization. I can create a Workspace account for them. I can launch them on the AppSheet, and I can have them do a series of tasks. And as they check off the series of tasks, lots of things happen in the back end, such as their account is created, some tasks are fired into our project management tool, maybe a few calendar events are scheduled with their line manager. You can create really intricate workflows as a user uses the application to make the process a bit nicer. But it's really customizable. And another cool thing that it does is it integrates really well with other Google services. So if you're already on Google, it's that whole thing about that tight-knit ecosystem. So maybe this isn't something that is about workflow automation, but what you can do is you can also tack on AI, behavioral AI onto it as well. So you can start pinging out requests for predictions and for predictive analytics as well, which is really, really cool. But yeah, coming back to the workflow automation sort of thing, there's a workflow builder within the platform that allows you to create custom workflows based on actions.
Yeah. And what you ever touched on, we chatted about earlier on, with Alex's presentation, I suppose with machine learning and AI, is there some sort of development in that area as well?
Yes, so it's quite exciting to be able to talk about this because this was in beta for a long while, is you can create predictive models using AppSheet really, really easily. There's kind of two pillars to AppSheet AI, one of them being the predictive model. Let's say I've got customer information, and based on all this customer information, I want to be able to predict my optimal customer, or I want to predict how many customers I'm going to have in a year. You can train a machine learning model using just a few buttons to be able to predict and create this kind of forward-thinking machine learning, a forecast. The second part of it, and this is really useful for maybe not startups, but more for users that are out in the field, and that's called OCR, optical character recognition. So this is a really popular use case for AppSheet, is that there's engineers, let's say, servicing wind turbines, right, in remote Scotland, in the Hebrides somewhere, right? And they need to, there's a serial number printed on the turbine, or there's some part. They take a photo of it using the AppSheet, and it uses optical character recognition to be able to discern the part number, the ID, and that dynamically links back to the database. So what you can do is you can train this image detection library to start bringing in data from different data sources as someone's doing an inspection, and that's really, really valuable, especially for a process that is usually paper-based. So you have an engineer that goes out with a notepad and a clipboard and a pen and paper, and they do the inspection. Well, now AppSheet kind of revolutionizes the way they do it by you come in, take a photo of the serial number, it fetches all the information it needs from an online database, and then you can fill out all the information you need.
And then that would work seamlessly with your sort of triggers to say, use a part, how long it's been on.
That's right.
It's gone over that amount of time.
So if
needs
the
service or whatever.
Exactly. If the degradation has gone down to a certain point, it fires an email to head office saying, hey, you need an engineer that needs to come out, take a look at this wind turbine because it's about to blow. It's the possibilities are endless, but that's a really, really popular use case.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you very much.
No problem.
About integrations, I'm curious about Google Maps. And again, like you said, it was mobile first, and thinking about features that exist on there that we don't have on our desktop computer when we're accessing an app. How well do they play? And can you detect a user's location and then use Google Maps? And then can you trigger an event based on where they are, if they're in a zone or things like that?
You're speaking my language. We work with ecology companies that are out about in Scotland doing ecology surveys, how many lizards in this area, how many sheep in this area, that sort of thing, how many trees in this area. And it's really important for them to be able to set up a geofence around the area that they're surveying and then be able to fire all that information into a centralized database. AppSheet makes that all possible. So Google Maps is a native integration, which means it just works off the shelf. So again, really popular use case, maybe coming back to the wind turbine analogy. I'm a service person trying to service this wind turbine. Usually you'd have to note the address, the postcode. Some of these places don't even have postcodes and addresses because it's in the middle of nowhere. You can just click the location pin, it drops you right there. It's got timestamp, geotag, and everything's recorded based on the user's mobile details. So yeah, Google Maps integration completely native.
Thank you.
No problem.
I might ask one more.
One more.
It's very much, it seems, this is kind of my day job, no-code stuff. Like I like building kind of internal tools with various things. I don't use AppSheet, but I probably will because we use G Suite. Do you think they have any plans to sort of flip it to kind of make more like kind of external-facing products? So having something like, with a login portal for customers, or, taking the HR tool that you made and selling it, do you think Google will kind of go down that route at all?
It's an interesting one. I think not in the near term. I think the current strategy that AppSheet are employing is businesses have a lot of problems internally that they need to solve when it comes to their processes. This is the tool to help them solve those problems. When it comes to externally facing applications, we have had a couple of good conversations with clients that are able to work within the limitations of AppSheet to be able to deliver a public-facing experience. A good example is snag reporting on new purchase homes. So if anyone's ever bought a house or a flat, especially a new build, you might find that there's some snags, and the whole snag reporting process is a tedious process. You're on the phone to the people that built your house saying, hey, staircase is wonky, or the room's not square, or the carpet's wrong, or the garden's leaking, or whatever. We've talked with organizations, home builders, that are wanting to propose an application using AppSheet that's on the Play Store. You can put these on the Play Store, and to allow their customers to report snags using their phones. So a really nice seamless system, a super, super simple app, literally one button, report snag. Take a picture, there it is, automatically geotagged, automatically timestamped, goes right into head office, and head office has a huge database, or maybe small database if they're good property builders, of all their snags that have been reported over the past X amount of days. So that's a good example where AppSheet would fit into it if they decided to kind of push that external facing agenda. But right now, I think it's kind of within closed doors of an organization for most use cases.
True. We probably could use something like that in Codebase, right, Max? Like a kind of snag. Codebase is like 40% snags, I would say in general. Like,
Did somebody say pink walls?
Look at the pink walls, not at the ceiling tiles. But thank you so much. Can we have one more round of applause for Victor?
No problem. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for having me. Am I good to go?
You're good to go. You're
Awesome.
free.